the host of Aaron's Hour, Aaron Phillips.
Hey, everybody. Good afternoon and welcome to another live edition of Aaron's Hour, coming to you live from the WWDB TV studios in the heart of Las Vegas, Nevada. That's right. I am back at it again. You know why? Because I got nothing else to do at noontime, and John's got no other show on the air. So he said, hey, let's put it together, shall we? You betcha. Thank you for tuning in, whether you're watching us on Facebook. Thank you very much. If you got us on YouTube, that's cool too. Make sure on YouTube, though, you send those comments in because John can show those to me as well as the ones I automatically get on Facebook. If you're about to leave your house and go somewhere, that's okay. If you have an Android like I do, WWDB TV phone app is available in the store. If you have an iPhone, Apple product, WWDB TV LV. Don't forget that LV. Otherwise, you're going to get really upset. You can't find it. You got to put that LV on there. Download that, and you can take us on the go. And last but not least, in about 72 hours, if you go to the WWDB TV channel on the Roku streaming service, not only will you catch this show and all my other shows beforehand, but as John likes to say, you will have a plethora of shows with which to watch at your earliest convenience. I will not give out multiple. I like that one too. So you have a multiple of plethora shows. Sylvester the cat has nothing on me right now. That's for sure. John, if I get the mic wet, I'm sorry. Join us. I would give you the phone number to call, but ever since we had some issues here in the studio, the phone line's not working exactly right. And so we don't want to have any issues with that. But put your messages in the chat room. Listen, you guys joined us on a great today. First of all, I was surprised in-studio co-host, which you'll not see until after my opening segment. And then after that, if you've read the update, my post, you'll know that my guest today is Mr. Alan Giek. He is an author. That's today. If it's not, we're in the wrong place at the right time. He wrote a book called Uncle Charlie Killed Dutch Schultz. Not Charles Schultz, the Peanuts guy, but Uncle. We'll talk about that when he comes back. So that's all mafia stuff, but not just mafia, the Jewish mafia. That's right. I may be connected, not even know it. Hey, you know what time it is? It's time for Vegas Unwrapped 2.0. Watch this.
With a nod to the past and an eye to the future, here is Aaron Phillips with Vegas Unwrapped 2.0.
Vegas Unwrapped 2.0. This is a point of the show where I share some stories, news and events, winnings, so that this way, if we keep sharing that, y'all keep coming here. And it's working because we've got visitors now coming, even number-wise, more than ever before, even better than the pre-pandemic. And at this point, though, I'm going to ask John we're going to change it up. I'm going to ask him to go to the wide shot because I want to introduce my special co-host today, Mr. Peter Papageorgiou. How are you, sir?
I'm good.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Well, thank you for having me.
Kind of last minute. I also like to surprise my co-hosts by asking them like a few hours ahead of time. Hey, you want to guest host with me today?
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't doing much. Catherine says it's okay. Anyway, good to see you, sir.
Well, thank you, sir.
I'm not going to say it's been a while, but to have you on the air with me, it's been a while. Usually Catherine's here. We talk about all the stuff you got.
Well, the last time I was on was in April.
And who did we have as our special guest then?
Wendy Kaufman.
From?
The Snapple commercial.
The Snapple lady. That's right. She is.
She's an American icon.
She is. An icon was the word I was looking for. Matter of fact, there's a scoop out there. It's a couple of people I know I think is having dinner with her tonight. I'm not sure about that. I'll have to check my calendar. But I think that's tonight, as John likes to ask,
so,
right?
Yeah.
And we're going to go to, I'm going to let people know where we're going to go because if we get paparazzi, that'll make us feel good. We're going to be at Marsigliano's Pizzeria and more down over on West Sahara and Cimarron tonight having dinner. But anyway, all right. So thank you for joining me. So you know what
My pleasure, Alan.
You know, Alan?
I mean, Aaron.
That's Alan over there. Should we start again? No, that's okay.
Aaron and Alan.
There you go.
Okay.
Don't mess it up, John. Anyway.
Double A.
MCO. All right. Hey, there were some winnings this week, and I always like to share this to let people know that, you know what, keep coming here because, first of all, even though I announced some great winners, this town was not built on winners. So keep that in mind. So here's the first one, a visitor from Texas.
Yeah.
600. I wonder if she did that when she won $643,000 after hitting a jackpot at the Las Vegas airport. The airport lately is at the airport. Wow. Yeah. The airport's really been good to a lot of people lately. I can never remember hearing and reading about so many stories of winning, but you got a captured audience. So that only makes sense, right?
Yeah, but that's only because they haven't paid anything in like 45 years.
That's very true. Very true. Let's see. Brittany from Texas raked in $643,435 playing Wheel of Fortune in the aid gates. Okay, that's pretty impressive. Doesn't say what I always like to know about these is how much the person spent at that time when they got the win, because that's not really all they spent. How much money did they really spend in all the time they were betting over the years that they may be coming?
Exactly right.
That to me is the true cost. But good for her.
But I'm sure she's ahead.
Yes, probably just a little bit.
I don't think she spent $600,000.
Probably not. Here's another one. A guest turns $10, a $10 bet, into $1.5 million after hitting a jackpot at downtown Las Vegas casino. Let's see, real quickly.
Which one was it?
This is at the Golden Nugget.
On Fremont.
Yes, on Fremont Street. According to a representative for the Golden Nugget, the lucky winner, who remains anonymous, boy, that family of anonymous people keeps growing every week, won a massive jackpot worth $1.5 million while playing the Wheel of Fortune slot machine. The guest, who was not identified, was playing the Wheel of Fortune $1 denim. That doesn't look right.
Denomination.
There you no $1. Well, denom. That's how they put it here in the article. Denomination.
Denomination.
No, they only said denom.
I understand.
It's abbreviated. That's terrible.
It's short for denomination.
It's just short. Meaning it takes $1 playing. The customer had 10 coins, which equaled the $10 bet. This is the kind of winning. I want to know how much she really spent over the lifetime of $10 bets before winning $1.5 million.
I want to ask you.
Yes.
If that was you, that 1.1 million.
Yes.
If you had won, what would you do with the money?
Oh, that's easy.
Okay.
Run and hide, not tell anybody where I'm going. Hi, Jennifer from Hawaii. No, in all honesty, and I got to be honest, it's cliche when people are asked that question. Certainly, I would take care of all my debt. Okay. I certainly would take care of helping my dad if he needed anything. My daughters, of course, and my sister. I would share the wealth with the immediate family, because I would finally be in a position to help them in ways I only wish I could help.
Right.
You know, it's a typical
family.
I'll give you 4,000 reasons why that
I thought
won't
we were
happen.
cousins.
We're cousins. See, that I can understand the anonymous part, because you know what, people will come out of the woodwork. We have a situation right now in our family on my wife's side where a passing has created alleged family members coming out of nowhere claiming that they should have rights to what's left. And it's like, wait a minute. And I don't want to deal with that.
And that always happens. Yeah.
That's why I have everything in a trust. So this way, no one can tell me what to do. Supposedly. Hey, do you remember when it was announced that Formula One was first coming?
Yes.
Right? About a year or so ago.
Yeah.
Do you remember the outrageous prices that hotels were going to start charging?
Yes.
Do you remember some of them?
Yeah.
MGM was like 10 grand a night for whatever. Really crazy. Well, here's the interesting part. Hotel room rates have plummeted for the Grand Prix when it comes in November. So
is it because lack of attendance?
Probably because they want a better response. I would say you're getting closer now, and probably these reservations just are not filling up as fast as they thought. They have fallen nearly 60% at some of the resorts since they were first posted last week. So for instance, here we go. I'll give you some of the comparisons. The Link, which literally will be right in the middle, in the heart of everything around the Strip, right? On November of last year, their room rate was coming out at just under or just about $2,700 a night. As of this past week, $1,395 per night. That's a 48% price decrease. Paris, Las Vegas, $3,500 down to $1,900. Planet Hollywood from $4,400 down to $1,800. Okay. The last one to mention, Caesar's Palace. And by the way, this was pre-cyber attack. Take that for what it's worth. Last year, $5,300 down to now $3,300. That's a 36% decrease. And also, the four properties saw a price decrease overall of 48% on average. Listen, November 16th through the 18th, if you're working in and around the Strip around that time, God bless you, because you ain't getting call right. Be the 3-day fever.
I'm not going to be there, that's for sure.
I'm not either. First of all, I'm not a big race guy anyway. I mean, it's just not my sport.
Hey, imagine the people
Me
who
neither.
made reservations last year and paid up front.
And I wonder if there's any restitution going back to those people. You know?
A couple of years ago, Catherine had gotten some tickets for NASCAR on the Speedway. And we went there for like an hour or two. I said, I want to go home. I'm just bored.
It's so funny you say that. When I worked for a national payroll company, they were Brett Bodine
Yeah.
We sponsored that company sponsored his car. So as the local manager of that company's office, they gave me tickets to take a couple of clients, and we were down in the pit, right? We were there at 6 a.m. and we were watching the race from the pit. By the way, the worst place to ever watch a race because you're only seeing the car for literally like 1.5 seconds as it goes past the start finish line. I ended up watching the race. They have the big metal toolbox basically where they have the people sit in their chairs to spy what's going on.
Right.
They have a little TV monitor. When I tell you, it's probably no bigger than the size of this book. I'm watching this with my guests on this little. We're all huddled around the little TV monitor to check. Then, of course, we held our breath because every time Brett Bodine got into a crash, we saw our ESOPs go down. You know what I'm saying? We had to replace the car. So, if you're in the stands, it's okay. But like you said, just by 6, we got there at 6 a.m. I think after like 15 minutes, my guests and I look at each other. We're like, "You done? Yeah, I'm done. Let's go." It's just not my cup of tea.
No.
Anyway, last thing, and I want you to speak on this if you can. Rumor has it, thankfully, it looks like that the writer's strike in Hollywood, and actually maybe our guest might be able to talk about this a little bit if he chooses to. Otherwise, he'll probably.
Alan was in Hollywood.
I know, but if he doesn't want to talk about it, he'll probably send somebody after us, if you know what I mean. But yeah, so it looks like the writer's strike maybe is about to finally be settled.
Yep.
What have you heard?
I heard the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like, and then when I saw the article, not to get political here, which I usually don't like to do, I shared it with the saying, this looks awfully good, but now if only CCSD and CCEA would be able to get to this point, all would be good in Las Vegas. So I hope it does for a lot of reasons.
But let's just see how good the settlement is. You know?
Well, that's just it. But but they're still negotiating. They came back, things are positive. So it sounds like that they're close, and in all of our shows that have been delayed, even Dancing with the Stars, I heard yesterday, one of the people who were scheduled to dance backed out saying, sorry, I won't do it until the writer's strike is settled. So even that show was going to be delayed. So I just can't wait for my regular shows because I'm tired of watching, like reruns from 10 years ago, because that's all I can get on my TV now. So I'm ready. I'm ready for new stuff, new reality shows, new Survivor, new everything.
Yes, new reality shows.
That's right. See what I did there, Peter? See what I did there? All right, with that, we're going to step aside for our first. I said a lot without saying anything, didn't I? I'm going to step aside for our first break because when we come back on the other side, right here in the middle seat, that's right, Alan Giek. I can't wait because we're going to talk not only about his book, but we had some fun talking about some stuff before he went on the air, all about his time in his editing days. You're not going to want to miss it. We'll be right back.
Film date.
This is the story of one man's incredible journey from 350 to 200-pound weight loss and his mission to help and inspire others. Aaron Phillips. People are praising Aaron's new book with 5-star reviews. Aaron's various humorous and wildly entertaining stories portray his rise as a sports announcer, his encounters with exotic and irregular entertainers on the Las Vegas Strip through his long-running Vegas Unwrapped radio show, and his contagious and positive style of pursuing success. Call now or visit our website or Amazon now to get your copy of Let My Voice Speak to You, stories from a Hall of Fame radio personality. Order now.
Find the art that speaks to your heart at Desert Valley Gallery. I've got to have it.
So colorful.
I can't live without it. You'll find the art that speaks to your heart at Desert Valley Gallery.
All right, welcome back to Aaron's Hour. Appreciate you joining in. John, you look... Yes.
Don't they have some kind of special deal there at the gallery?
Yes, sir, they do. By the way, Desert Valley Gallery located at Tivoli Village. If you go in there and mention Aaron's Hour or Aaron Phillips, they will give you a 20% discount off your first $1,000 purchase from now to the end of the year, December 31st. This way you get all your holiday shopping done for Veterans Day, for your birthdays, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Christmas, whatever you celebrate. Even if you're not celebrating anything, they have some great stuff there. So go in, mention the show, mention my name, 20% off for first-time buyers of purchases of $1,000 or more. John.
Hey,
Yes.
also, tickets for Monique's show in November.
I already have mine.
Just gone on sale.
I have mine.
All right.
Did you get yours?
Mine, yeah.
All right. So if you want to see Monique, I forget how we pronounce her name. Hester. Thank you. Monique Hester. They do cabaret nights there at the gallery. And
nice.
it's very limited, like
She's
30
awesome.
tickets is all that there is. But Monique is there. By the way, when we had her and Ed Murray on the show, they sang, what was the song they sang from? Why am I blanking?
Suddenly Seymour.
Suddenly Seymour. Thank you very much. So call the gallery, see if there's any tickets left, and go down because my wife and I will be there. Anyway, we are welcomed. We are welcoming. We are like, I wish my brain was attached to my mouth right now. I'm having trouble speaking. I know, right? Alan Giek joins us. He is the author of Uncle Charlie Killed Dutch Schultz, the Jewish Mob, A Family Affair. That's right. There you go. John could switch to my one shot. I'd show you a better picture of it. Here it comes right now. Right now. There you go. There it is right there. I'll get it out of my face. So there's the book right there. Alan, thank you for coming in, sir.
Thanks for inviting me. It's
Oh,
great to be here.
my
Aaron
pleasure.
And Peter and John.
Well, listen, I know you're here because you have nothing better to do. It's okay. You can be honest with me. It's okay.
Okay, I'll be honest. Yeah, you're right.
I know. No, but seriously, thank you for coming in, and thank you for actually it was Peter who recommended that you come on, and I love it. Listen, mob in Las Vegas stories go like peanut butter and jelly, don't they?
They should.
Right? What do you think's the fascination with mob? Obviously, mob's been here for so many years. But is that really what the birth of the fascination is, you think, of mob in Vegas?
It's so weird because I think it's sort of evolved into American folklore in a way. And the internet has made it totally crazy for me.
Mm-hmm.
When I started writing the book, I was unaware of the interest in it. I wrote it just basically for family at the beginning.
Okay.
But soon before it was published, I found a website, one of the Facebook groups called La Kosher Nostra.
La Kosher Nostra.
La Kosher Nostra. And I put a little...
Oy vey.
They're a bunch of
I
mashuganas.
put a little piece of the book
funny.
that was to be
Right.
up on it.
Nice.
And I got so many responses. People said, oh, you knew him? And they wanted to know all these details. But to me, it was odd because it was someone who passed away 50 years ago.
Really?
I mean, most of the characters in
Sure.
here. And they wanted to know all of these details. And to me, it was like, I never expected that kind of. I knew there was like The Sopranos and The Godfather. We
Right.
know all of this stuff, but here were people who were really specific about their interests in these characters, and that led me to the Cleveland Mob, which one of my uncles was in Las Vegas, a mafia history. And at the end of the day,
And who was the uncle?
Uncle George
There
and
you-
Uncle Charlie was the one who
Right.
he was. They were both. It was a Jewish organized crime culture that I grew up in, and
Okay.
there were several of them. But what interested me at the end of the day, I was on 35 mob sites on Facebook
Wow.
with a combined readership of 660,000 members. That didn't mean they were unique
Right.
members like me. I was a member of all of them, putting pieces up on them. And to me, it was just stunning that they were asking questions about people that I knew so personally.
Mhm.
And it was so normal.
Right. Just regular conversation.
It was just
because you knew the history.
and also, I mean, and these people, when I grew up, we knew who they were, but they were normal to us.
Right.
But that's a little away from your question.
No, that's
What's
right.
the fascination
fascination,
is? It's social media changed it all.
Absolutely. That is tremendously well said. By the way, I just want to let our audience know you've been a radio DJ for a combined 35 years. You're an author of that book. You also wrote Glenfiddich Inn, which is a novel set in World War I era in Boston and New York. Producer of Grammy-nominated Caravana Cubana, late night. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Not bad for a Jew. Late night session. Also, I
Number
know,
one.
I know. And also Del Alma, London School of Economics and Political Science, a BA, City College of New York, lifetime member, Motion Pictures Editors Guild Local 700, film editor, Paramount Pictures, and check this, folks, Wide World of Sports. So if you read my promo posts, I've been waiting all day to ask him this. I already know the answer because I let the cat out of the bag before I went on the air. But for those fans who remember the intro of Wide World of Sports, there's always that one poor skier every week kept falling down the slope in the jump, went flying off like the skis were crisscrossed, and you just knew, oh, that's not going to be good. Did you edit that in?
No, that was there before I got
Oh,
there.
okay.
But to me, there had another meaning. When I saw that every week, I knew that the show we worked on in crazy, nutty hours
Sure.
and days, it was on the air and I was done with it. I'd never see it again. That was my relation to that shot.
Peter, do you have a question? Jump on in here.
How long did it take you to write the book?
Several years, but it was off and on. COVID came in. I
Well,
thought
COVID was a good time to write too.
Yeah, it was. But the other things had come up. But I never thought about writing the book. But about, let's say, 5 years ago, my favorite cousin called me and he was just ecstatic. He said, could you go to this website? And I took my computer. I went to it and there was a black and white photo, 30s, three men with fedoras in a police lineup. And I said, yeah, so what? He said, that's my father on the right. And sure enough, it was a young Uncle Saul.
Right.
And he said, my father is on the cover, on the homepage of this mob site, not Uncle Charlie, not Uncle George. And he mentioned all these others who were in the book because his father was the lowest ranking criminal of 30 years.
Okay,
He had a huge record, but it was all of small time stuff, bad checks. I mean, he didn't rank with these other people. So it was funny to him and to me that it was his father on the homepage. And a few weeks later, I went to see my sister, who's an attorney in Boston. And I told her the story and she laughed and she said, I have pictures of all those people.
Oh, wow.
And I hadn't I've been in and out of the country. I hadn't seen any photos. And she took out some boxes and there were all the people who were like these major crime figures.
Mhm.
And she
Major
also had a book.
players.
I took them on the side and she had a book called Mafia, which each page was dedicated to a crime figure. It was put out about 1980. And sure enough, there were the dedicated pages to the family members. So I said, I have to write this story. And that was the way.
Was it easy to get it published? I mean, to get it
I
out there?
published it myself.
Oh, self-published.
And I'm glad I can't say I'm glad I did or not. It would have been good to have a publisher, but it's been getting a fairly good
Good. Okay.
reviews, and
It's on Amazon, right?
it's on Amazon and it's on Barnes and Noble, and it's in Kindle version as well.
Right next to my book. Let me ask you this. What was the aha moment for you in your life when you realized the family business, the Jewish mob culture? When did you realize what was happening?
I think it was always part of our understanding. When I say our, I meant my sister who was younger than me, and my older brother, who later became a police detective.
Right, I read that.
Which was interesting because he had an even closer relationship because at that time the police were and the organized crime, they were together
Right.
in so many ways.
Yeah.
And he wound up getting busted in the Prince of the City story.
Wow.
And,
Oh, wow.
but that was later on. But to answer your question, I always sort of remembered the jokes that we took for granted. Like we were walking on Coney Island Boardwalk one time. I must have been 9 years old, 10 years old. And someone pointed to the hotel there. And he said, that's where they threw A.B. Rellis out the window. He was a Murder Incorporated
Murder
man
Inc.
who became an informant. And he was under police guard. And he supposedly jumped, which was crazy to think about.
They threw him out.
And they told it so naturally, like, oh, A.B. Rellis
Like it was
jumped out
just
like
matter of
nothing. And
fact,
fact,
right.
I was like 9 years old. You mean the police threw someone out the window? And someone else said, yeah, and it was it's right around the corner from the fun house. And that was their dad jokes at the
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I always sort of knew that these people were they were different than my mother's side of the family, who were like your normal aunts and uncles.
So did you find, did the two sides of the family then mix well?
They
Just-
mixed well, and the people who weren't, these people, I mean, their children were my cousins.
Gotcha.
The wives loved me. I loved
Right.
them, and the men were. They could have all been had any other jobs in
Jeez.
town, except one time when I was I was 13 actually. I remember I was on the subway in New York, and one of the members who I mentioned. I said to my father, "Where is he?" He said, "I think he went to Europe for a few weeks." And I swear, the next day on the front page of the Daily News, there was Sammy Goldstein,
Oh,
and he
geez.
turned out to be he was the president of the Teamsters local. And of course, he was busted for something. And the headline said, "Teamster boss takes the fifth 54 times," or whatever.
Wow.
And it was Sammy.
As you mentioned, what age about for you that you remember that? I'm thinking, man, your bar mitzvah must have been one hell of a shindig. That's what I'm thinking of.
It's so funny you mentioned that because all of the pictures of people sitting
From your-
around from
from
my bar
mitzvah,
mitzvah,
yes.
almost every one
How
of
about
them
that one? That's
is right
crazy.
there.
Huh?
And I joked with my sister about it because she gave me the book itself to
Right.
take when
Sure.
I left Boston along with the
Wow.
mafia book. I said, "Well, here, one page is them sitting at my bar mitzvah. The next page is the FBI page that had their associates and mugshot and whatever
That's crazy.
else." So I said, I can't resist writing this.
When did you realize? I mean, you wrote another book. How long ago before this one did you write that other book?
That was 2015. So
Okay.
it was about 7 years before this
Before
one came out.
okay.
And my sister, when I was writing that book, was of interest to me, World War One and
Sure.
a lot of the.
You're a
things-
history buff, obviously.
Yeah, very much so.
Okay.
Also, radio started right before World War One, and I was very much interested in the history of radio, which is a part of Glenfiddich Inn. But my sister said, "Why are you writing this? Why don't you write about the family?" And I said, "Well, maybe we'll do that." And it still didn't occur to me until I got that call from my cousin with that photo that sort of set
Wow.
it in motion.
Have you gone to the Mob Museum here?
Yeah,
Yes.
actually, I was lucky enough. They invited me to
Speak.
do a presentation, and I did it in June.
Nice.
And
Okay.
I have it. I'll forward it to you. I'll forward it to you.
And I was there. I gave, and then there was a Q&A, and I sold, and they let me sell books. But the funny thing about that was they said, "We'll do about 40 minutes." And I started to figure out, they gave me, I put up photos. They did a real professional job with PowerPoint photos.
It's a
And
fun place.
I went through it a few times and said, "Oh yeah, this is 40 minutes. I don't have to rush then and think I'm." As soon as I stood up, I forgot everything I was going to say. Every word. I couldn't think of a single thing. But as soon as the first word came out, I couldn't stop for the next few minutes. Probably like what I'm doing right now.
No, the great thing is for fans out there who love the history of the mob. Okay,
Yeah.
and I find myself as you're sharing your stories, and I've had the honor, I put that word in quotes,
Yeah.
of interviewing other mobsters in my life, like Frank Collada, Henry Hill, Frankie Citro.
That was during Vegas Unwrapped, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
which one?
When you had the whole panel.
All of the
Yes,
above.
all of the above. Yes,
Yeah,
Ricky and
yeah, the
I,
whole panel.
courtesy of Craig Vincent, the actor who was in Casino, he played the cowboy.
Oh, right.
He put together this panel of Henry, Frank, Dennis Rinaldi, the FBI agent who actually arrested Collada.
I think it's on YouTube, right?
It is still up on YouTube, but we had this huge round table. And there's one shot of my partner, Ricky, and I, and as Collada was talking, our heads were cocked in the same way to listen. And I tagged that picture like synchronized listening. I mean, it was so perfect. But I find myself, for me, the fascination is I catch myself, even in this situation, listening to the stories as a listener is to enjoy the history of it. And so for me, it's fascinating to hear all of that because I enjoy hearing the stories, the folklore, which I think is a great word that you use in that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying folklore people can say is like, it's just stories people share from generation. No, folks, this is real stuff. But the stories of them still stay accurate, right? There's really no change of the stories.
No, absolutely not. And
and you lived it, let alone somebody who's writing about it outside.
The stories I heard when I was younger, from 9 till the late 80s.
Till
when
last week. No,
till
just-
last week. It was amazing to me how much they conformed to the histories I read doing the research for the book, because I couldn't just tell stories, anecdotes about
Sure.
family members. I wanted to put it in the context of the history, and it really rang true all these years later.
Wow.
And one of the things that interested me and came out of it, I was aware of it when I was younger, was that organized crime was the biggest cash flow industry in American history. And it came because these people had business relationships with each other. Italians and Jews, as I
Yeah.
mentioned several times, do it. I live that because I worked in some of those places.
Right.
My brother did. I said, these relationships lasted for 30 and 40 years
Sure.
on a handshake. They
Sure.
weren't going to sue each other.
Right.
So
I'll take you to court. No, you're not.
the money was so big and
Sure.
so that it wasn't worth it to go out and shoot somebody.
Right.
We know of all these murders and all the sensational stuff, but the bedrock of organized crime to me was the business relationships, legitimate and illegitimate ones.
I want to ask you a question, then I'm going to throw a curveball out at you, which is the ones I warned you about earlier. When we interviewed and had that, what we called the mob sit-down interview that we were just referring to, Henry Hill was one of our panel, he was an interesting cat anyway. So my partner looked, and we know the history and the folklore of Vegas and the mob being tied together in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And then we had that switch to where they tried to make it more family friendly in the late 80s, 90s. So my buddy Ricky, my partner Ricky, he deadpanned a question to Henry Hill, okay? And he said to him, he says, Henry, he says, is the mob still involved in Las Vegas today? And we're talking what, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we did this interview. Henry Hill, without losing a beat, looks at Ricky and he goes, what are you, a country bumpkin? Of course they are, you know. And from that point, the show could end it. From that point forward, I called Ricky a country bumpkin just to keep that going. But in your opinion, I mean, do you believe that the mob still is involved in some capacity here in town, in Vegas, or any other gambling area around the world?
I can't say because I'm really not part of that,
Sure,
that
but
world.
just-
However,
Right.
I would say that they'll always be there.
Okay.
They'll always be on some level, whether it's those old mob families
Right.
we all learned about,
Right.
or just some other new
Opportunity.
families, new opportunities, new ethnic groups,
Sure.
whatever it is, wherever there's money
Yeah,
on this
uh,
they'll be there.
scale,
Right.
whether it's union activities, elections,
Sure.
donations, whatever, there'll always be someone scamming, and there'll always be a group of people scamming.
Gotcha. So in other words, those calls I get from India telling me I have a long lost aunt and uncle for $1,200 million.
You too?
Okay. So it's a big mishpacha then is what we're
That's
talking
okay.
about. Okay. So I'm going to throw a couple of curveballs before we
Go
take
for
our
it.
next break. Who's your favorite actor of all time? Is it the one you mentioned?
Yes,
in the back?
I have to say, Jack Warden.
Okay.
And I say that because just yesterday or today, I saw someone on Facebook
Right.
put up a tribute to him. It was his birthday or a day
Oh,
he
okay.
passed away. I can't recall,
Right.
but I didn't even know he was a paratrooper during World
Oh.
War II. He was a boxer. He was a bouncer.
Wow.
I
Oh, I
didn't
didn't
know
know
any-
that.
Wow.
I didn't know, according to what I read yesterday, but I loved him in some of the movies he was in,
Sure.
like Shampoo, the Warren Beatty movies,
Uh-huh.
and the one he did where he played
The football.
the football. I worked on that one.
Did you
And,
really?
Yeah. And
Something
I can't.
in Time. What the hell is that movie?
Someone out there knows.
Someone will know. What was the movie where he played for the Rams? And it
Yeah,
was a
he
remake
came
of the
back
original.
as a Heaven Can Wait.
Heaven Can
Heaven
Wait.
Can Wait, yeah. That was in the 80s?
That was
Warren
I
Beatty
think
was-
the movie came out about 79, but I worked
Right.
on it.
80s?
All I did was they had some words and some scenes that had to be changed a little, and everybody knew at the studio that Warren Beatty was the prince at
Right.
the
At
time.
that time.
But everybody, I have to say, the people in unions loved Warren Beatty
Right.
because he was really a good guy. The studio executives hated him, but one scene was a locker room scene, and all the players off camera were yelling, "Oh, F you," and what. So me and one of the other people, we put our voice in, and Warren Beatty called the editing room, and he said, Who is that voice? And I said, me. And he said, don't give up your day job.
Hence why he went to authoring and not.
I laughed and I loved it. And
And that was a remake because the original one
that
was
was
many years
something
before that,
yeah,
right?
I forget about this.
So what's your favorite movie of all time?
Well, I always have to actually. On the Waterfront is one of
Classic.
them, and The Man Who Would Be King
Mm.
with Christopher Plummer
Mhm.
and Michael Caine and Sean Connery.
Wow.
I remember
Sean
seeing that and being so amazed by the artistry of John Huston
Sure,
directed
sure.
it.
Sure, yeah.
One last question before we go to break. What's your favorite music genre?
Well, I was an Afro-Cuban music host for 25 years on the radio, and I sort of, for a Jewish boy to wind up. But as it turns out, there were a fair number of non-Latinos who were musicians and well-known one in that field. And so I'm still have a great affinity for it.
Fair enough. On that note, we are going to step aside for another break of the show because I got bills to pay. If anybody wants to help pay them, though, I'll certainly take the help. You're watching Aaron's Hour. Special guest, Alan Giek, and my special in-studio co-host today, Mr. Peter Papageorgiou. More with Aaron's Hour. We'll be right back.
Hello, everybody. It's me, President Trump, greatest president in the history of presidents, and I've been on a lot of shows, believe me, but the best one by far is Aaron's Hour with Aaron Phillips. This guy is so amazing. What a great interviewer, and you can catch him every Saturday from 12 to 1. 12 to 1. It's a tremendous show. You know why? I was on it, and the ratings went through the roof. Check it out on WWDB TV. That's WWDB TV. It's huge.
Are you looking for someone to provide training to your staff? Do you need a motivational speaker about how to handle change? Do you have an upcoming event that needs an MC to handle those responsibilities? Well, look no further than longtime Las Vegas radio personality Aaron Phillips. I am local to Las Vegas, and I can blend my talents with any audience. For more information, please visit www.aaronphillipsvoice.com and book me for your next event or training needs.
Hi, welcome back to Aaron's Hour. Thank you for joining us today. Talk about the Jewish mob. People always used to laugh about that there was a Jewish mob, but truly there was. And Mr. Alan Giek talks about it in his book because that's what he does best. This was family, right? You talk about it in your title, the Jewish mob. It's a family affair, and it just was normal for you.
It was very.
What was
normal.
Passover like? It's a silly question because if you're talking about the mob, the mob has gravy and the red stuff, and then Passover. I mean, was there a mixing of cultures there? I mean, was it a traditional Passover holiday?
It was very much. My mother.
Chinese food.
That's Christmas.
That's
and a movie.
That's Sunday.
That's right.
My mother always wanted to make everything as normal as possible.
Okay.
And we always had Passover. A lot of times it was with her family.
Okay.
And sometimes we would go to my father's family, but these were all normal. This was not like a cult of some. Everybody was really normal.
And it's so funny you say that. I'm glad you said that. And Peter, then please, I know you got something ruined. When I did that mob sit down, I'll never forget Frank Culotta, the Hole in the Wall gang, for those who don't know.
Yeah.
Craig Vincent had this beautiful suite set up for us at the Green Valley Ranch. And I remember we're sitting at the table getting ready to go, and Frank Culotta was sitting in a chair, like a grandfatherly, like high back chair in the far corner, and his grandkids were there and running around, and they're going up to him. He's his grandfather. And I looked at this from afar. I'm like, what's abnormal about this picture? Nothing. Because you have all the stories and the history and the blood and the guts, because that's all sensationalized in a lot of ways, but real. Okay. And here's this guy who's notorious for what he had done in his line of work.
Absolutely.
Just being a grandfather.
It's granddad.
What a paradox that was for me. So that just flashed into my head as you're talking about how mom would try to make these things as normal as possible.
My father had a serious operation, and I remember we were living in the Bronx, and I forgot about this until my sister reminded me of it. But Meyer Lansky called him to find out how he was, because my father really was I called him mob adjacent later on.
Mob adjacent.
They would never let him.
Right.
But he knew Meyer Lansky since they were, and as I told in the story, I shared a pastrami sandwich with Meyer Lansky, which was not as big a deal then as it is now. I mean, he was an old Jewish man to me at the time. I knew who he was.
Sure.
But Meyer called up and wished my father well, and he said, according to my father, he said, the doctors don't know shit, so you just do this. And my mother from that day on would say, that nice Mr. Lansky. Because she would call him that because out of respect, she knew him for her whole life.
Yeah.
Mr. Lansky was such a nice man. So she really worked on.
Did you see
making
the
it
Meyer
more-
Lansky movie that was, I think it was Netflix or something?
I watched the first part of it, but I sort of lost interest. I love Harvey Keitel.
Right.
He's
right.
great. He was great in it, but my complaint was the B story of the guy who was writing it.
Mhm.
And-
The backstory
and
on
the
him.
backstory, it was a little too much for
Gotcha.
me. That took me out of what I
Gotcha.
wanted to know. But some people thought it was good.
I enjoyed it. I also had, and part of my enjoyment was because right before that, I had an opportunity to interview Meyer Lansky Jr., who lives in town. So hearing about it through him, and he inspired me to make sure I watched it. Let's just put it that
How
way.
did he think? What did
He thought it was great.
Okay, cool.
He enjoyed it. He thought it was a
Right.
great picture of his dad. It was where he focused. And I understand. I think they use that other character more to, I don't say lighten it a little bit, but I think they kind of use it as a small diversion
Sure.
to what Lansky had going on in his life. That's the way I viewed it.
Sure.
You know, he was obviously the subplot behind all of that. There were times where I'm like, man, that's a little hokey with this guy, you know, but I thought it was well done. I thought it was pretty, but that's me. And I
I'm
like
gonna go
Harvey
back and-
Keitel also.
yeah, he's a favorite.
He's great.
Yeah,
Did
he's
you ever
good at
see
that.
The Bad Lieutenant?
I did
Yeah,
not.
I saw
Oh,
it.
I have not.
he was so bad. You have to really.
Yeah,
see
it was really.
It reminded me because that was the era my brother was a detective.
Gotcha.
too,
Ah, okay.
Gotcha.
But Harvey Keitel pulled that off great.
Absolutely. Peter, you have a question? Something you want to throw out there?
I want to kind of talk to you, get some insight into the whole Hollywood. When you worked in Hollywood, how was it for you?
For
You know,
me,
any stories for people out there, you know, working with actors or
well, I have
stars?
to say, everybody, and I wasn't working on editing feature films like the first editor on them. We would recut stuff. I worked on TV shows. I mentioned
The Watch,
Sorry.
The Watcher.
The Watcher, which was, I mentioned that because it was set in Las Vegas. It was
Right.
probably the mid 90s. And that was the introduction of new editing equipment as well, which you and I were talking
Yeah.
about, the Avid
The
and
Avid.
the Lightworks and things of that sort. But when I worked there throughout the 80s, and I worked on most of the films that Paramount produced at the time, Fatal Attraction and
Okay.
Beverly Hills Cop 1 and 2 and Top Gun, and the list went on and on. Most of the people I worked with who came in to do voiceover, to change some of the lines, we added a lot of time to films too, not just took out time, because sometimes if we took out 10 minutes of a movie, we had to look for outtakes that we could add 15 minutes back and recut them. So that was a job that required a fair amount of time and energy. It wasn't just cutting out the words at the
Yeah.
time. Now they don't. I don't even know if they do that because this was before cable and Netflix, and no one would want to see.
You mean
it.
when we only had 5 channels on the TV?
Yeah, that's
With that
exactly right.
clicker?
But they would buy a network would buy Fatal Attraction for 3 screenings for $6 million. So there was a lot of money involved in delivering a version that their censors would accept, because we have to remember all these the people who were sponsoring the company sponsoring that had their own censorship stuff, and a lot of what I also dealt with the censors, and some of it was really
A little too much.
It showed me a lot lot American culture at that time. And one quick story
Yeah.
about that, if I may.
That's
I
what we
worked
wanna
on
hear.
Airplane, which was Howard Koch
Oh.
produced
Oh, I
it,
love that.
and I loved Howard Koch.
Don't call me
singing it.
Shirley.
Yeah, that's right. And Jerry Zucker, who became a great Hollywood director after
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
That was probably his entrance into. He did another movie before that, but I screened it with the censors, and if you remember, there were 2 scenes. One was a recurring one where a young boy goes into the cockpit. Peter Graves is at the
Yes.
and
Yeah, yeah.
Jabbar is the other one,
Yeah.
and. Here he goes in, and Peter Graves says, "Did you ever see a grown man naked? You ever in a Turkish prison?" All of that. And,
Yeah.
and another scene was a young boy and girl are sitting down and they're having an adult conversation, and this flight attendant leans in and says, "Coffee, tea, or milk?" She says, "Coffee," and she says, "How do you like it?" She says, "Black like my men."
Yes, yes, yeah. I remember that.
And the censors insisted on that coming out. And I said, "But you said nothing about Peter Graves with the boys. Did you ever see a grown man naked?" "No, that was fine."
Jeez.
And we had to take that, do something, whatever we did.
Wow.
So that told me a lot about
Sure,
censorship
sure.
at the time. But working on the brief bits of time, like Michael Douglas doing a voice
Fatal Attraction, yeah.
for Fatal Attraction, and also for Black Rain, I believe was another movie, and Jack Nicholson coming in for. They were. It was a factory to
Sure.
them, and they were all pleasant. They knew the job.
Right.
We were fine. There were no.
Who was your most favorite person you ever worked with over the years?
Uh,
Not Jack Warden. That's a different question.
The director of Urban Cowboy. His name was Jim Bridges, and
But that was with John Travolta.
that was with
Yeah.
John Travolta, who was
Right.
great too, and Deborah Winger, and one of my favorites, Scott Glenn,
Okay.
who was a great character actor. But we had to talk about it. I said, "Why don't you? This is such a hit," and the network wanted to make it a shorter film, and for some reason, I can't say I inspired him or gave him, but he went to the network and I said, why don't you make this a 2.5-hour film? Add all this outtakes stuff that Robert Evans and the studio didn't want in it. And they said, okay. And we added 18, 20 minutes to that version. It was also interesting because that was the beginning of videotape. And so they were trying to sell new versions. Here was Urban Cowboy in the theaters, but sell them the director's version at the time.
The old director's cuts, right?
Yes,
Director's
correct,
cut.
yeah.
We did that with Saturday Night Fever also.
Wow.
But
You worked on Saturday Night Fever too?
Yeah, the director's cut.
Oh, okay.
The director's cut. I wasn't on any of the original editing of
I
those.
love that movie. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. And anyway,
Do you ever wish to wear a white suit? I'm just curious.
Yeah, actually, in here, there's a picture of me with my father at Matty the Horsey and Ella's bar, where he gave my father his retirement party, and I'm wearing the suit. And I think I wrote in there, "This is my John Travolta."
Oh my
suit."
goodness!
So
Listen,
there you go.
I have not. Listen, I got to be honest. I have. We just chatted 2 days ago.
That's so
I have not
funny.
had a chance, and I've talked about your bar mitzvah, which you had in the book, and now I've got the white suit.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And there's right. You'll
Wow.
see the
I will.
answer is.
I
there
remember
is one.
Alan with they just I just saw on YouTube recently they had like a documentary about Saturday Night Fever, the whole behind the scenes
I
and
didn't
all
know
that.
that.
It's on YouTube,
Oh.
and even John Travolta, he thought it was gonna be like an art house film.
Uh-huh.
No one expected it to be what
No.
it became. Yeah.
And it was interesting because he
It kind of had like a low budget feel to it too.
It did.
An independent
It,
feel.
it definitely was. And the interesting thing to me was that both directors, John Badham directed Saturday Night Fever,
Yeah.
and both directors told me that John Travolta fought to have the dancing in one long shot, like Fred Astaire. You
Wow.
didn't see like all this fancy
Right.
cutting. And he won the day in both of them. He said,
Yeah.
"Let's the audience see the dancing." And the director, who I mentioned, Jim Bridges, after we did this big version, the network said, "Well, now give us one with 36 minutes less." So we went back and we took out all the stuff. And I became very fond of Jim. He was really a great director to work with. But the Saturday night, Jim Bridges told me that the editor at the time cut the dance scene, one of those scenes with Deborah Winger, cut it, and they spent the whole night in it. And John Travolta came in the next day, said, "Oh no, just one shot, the shot that goes around
Right.
the camera." He says, "That's it. That's nothing else."
Jeez.
So they took out
Yeah.
all the editor's work and put that one shot in, and it was one of the
Well,
great films of the era.
And
Those
it's interesting
iconic
because I got to
scenes.
think that the actor in that moment, in this case Travolta, has a different feel for a scene because he's in it,
Right.
versus an editor who's maybe looking at it from outside the forest and getting a different feel for it.
Absolutely, absolutely, and also their attitude, which an editor would have, and anyone behind the camera would have to share. He's up on the screen that
Right.
way.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
its director's name is on the film. It's his.
Right.
It's his reputation, not
Right.
not mine.
Right.
Or
Exactly.
anyone else, or the studio
Sure.
executive. for
Sure.
that.
You always remember the movie, the title, the director, and some of the actors.
That's it.
That's pretty
Correct.
much it.
Yeah.
I want to. We have about 10 minutes left. Something on the back cover, and I know it's in the story. Your late father-in-law, Lou Leonard, is that how it was pronounced?
No.
The first fighter pilot in the Israeli Air Force, tells of organized crime's crucial support of the Israelis in their armed struggle for an independent state in Palestine. Can you just elaborate a little more on why that was crucial to the relationship of Jews getting an independent state at that time?
Yeah, it was during World War II. To be brief, the Navy intelligence was concerned because the Nazi submarines were taking out. Let me move on to that. Without that, but to answer your question, right as soon as World War II ended, David Ben Gurion came to the United States to raise money. He wanted to have 2 million Jews emigrate to Palestine. He didn't know 6 million were killed at the time, but immediately, because of the war connection between the mob on the docks, Navy intelligence, the Palestine brigade that fought in Italy, they set up secret bases in Italy. And the Italian government, and I have to say this because I mentioned it in the book, of all the governments after World War II with the Holocaust, traumatized survivors, the ones who treated them best were the Italian government. And they took them in, and they were war shattered themselves. And they had these bases going to Palestine, bringing survivors and also war materials from the docks in New York. My late father-in-law, Luna Knott, was a fighter pilot in Okinawa. He was a Marine Corps fighter pilot, the most gentle man you've ever met. You know the type, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And he was recruited by the Haganah, the secret, the Israeli paramilitary, to go to these secret bases and fly material to Palestine. And he was later on, he flew a Czech plane, which was a German Messerschmitt. He was the first one who passed the test on the Messerschmitt. So he and three other pilots held back the Egyptian advance. And one of those pilots was Asa Weitzman, who became the president of Israel and a lifelong friend of his. But behind it all was money from the docks, money and material. And of all things, Lucky Luciano had been deported right after the war. Meyer Lansky helped get him out of a lifelong sentence, and they deported him to Italy.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah, to Italy.
Yeah. And as soon as he got there, he was totally in support of Meyer's support of Israel. So it was his word that those secret bases were going to be protected. And Lula Knott said he never heard of Meyer Lansky before because he came from Wilkes. He was from Hungary. And he didn't know anything about mob stuff but then once he got to Italy, he realized these bases were really well protected.
We can talk about this stuff for hours, and maybe we'll have you coming back at different times to talk more about the book and share some of your other stories, because I'm fascinated by the stories. I have to remind myself I'm co-hosting the show, not just listening to everything that we're talking about. I want to ask you a couple more crazy questions, and then we'll get back to where people can get the book and all that sort of stuff. What is your favorite vacation destination spot?
I would say Thailand.
Okay.
And I lived there for 2 years in the early 2006 to 2008. And,
gotcha.
And that would probably be the place I would go to spend a lot of time.
If money were no object, assuming you don't already have this, what would be your all-time car that you'd like to see parked in your driveway someday?
To be honest, I know nothing about cars. And I have friends who really can pick out that 1956 Buick or whatever and talk to me about, I know nothing about cars. And if I had all the money in the world, I'd probably be still driving the Kia,
same car?
the Kia Sorento that's in the driveway right now.
Sounds like a commercial.
That's right. Exactly. There you go.
Maybe they'll get a brake job from them.
That's right. A little pat on the back. Extra cookie while you're waiting during your oil change. All right. If a movie were made about you, who would you like to see star as you in that movie?
I joked about that with my sister and some of the people. Like, who would you? And I kept thinking about. I did give that thought, but I can't come up with a name of any of the young actors, of course.
Anybody. It doesn't have to be anybody of today. Who, across the board. I mean, you've worked with plenty. I mean, who do you think would be the right Alan Giek if that movie were made?
Well, one of the people I would think of when I was younger would be Andy Garcia.
Okay.
Only because I know him through the music.
Sure.
And And I'm such a fan of his as a person.
Okay.
And I think he had some of those attributes that
Okay.
I would see in myself.
Christopher Walken.
I love Christopher Walken because this man is totally nuts in some way. I mean,
Because I can see him picking up your cadence and,
Oh,
and how you
How about
speak.
Alan Arkin?
Alan,
Oh, that's a good one.
Alan
too.
Arkin plays.
That'd be,
Like
I
that
like
that would
that.
be-
That'd be a good one.
but Christopher Walken in the movie, I think it was True Romance.
Uh-huh.
He was so sick. I mean, and I
Yeah.
know it's an act, and he does, but he pulls it off so many
Right on.
times. It's just there's something going
He
on.
came
in
from
that
Astoria, where I grew up,
Did he really?
and they had Walken's Bakery
Oh,
on
I didn't know
Broadway.
that.
in
Where was
Astoria.
this?
He's from Astoria,
Oh, I didn't know
the whole
that.
family, and there was Walken's Bakery. So when he won the Academy Award in 1977, you walked into that bakery.
Steinway?
Yeah, there was photos of him and everything.
On
Wow.
Steinway?
No, it was on Broadway.
Oh, okay.
Broadway on the 31st Street, just a block off. Yeah.
I love Steinway. I always have. It's like, to me, the most diverse street in the country.
Yeah, that's where I grew up. Yeah.
Two
Did
more
you-
questions, and then we'll
Yeah.
get back to having, because we only have a couple of minutes left. Favorite superhero of all time,
Uh-oh.
Batman or Superman? And if you need a little hint, let me give it to you here on my phone, just in case. Who's
Well,
your favorite
I
superhero?
I didn't need the hint because
Okay.
I'm in the same league as you are. It's
Oh.
yeah,
There you go. It's Batman,
it's
baby.
Batman.
So you'll be invited back.
Absolutely.
Okay,
No-
well,
no,
I was
no
hoping
question.
I would get that as a reward.
This past the 19th, I think, was Adam West's birthday.
Is that right?
Yeah, and Batman Day, of course, was last Saturday.
Oh.
National Batman Day. So yeah, I grew up on Adam West and Burt Ward. So
Okay.
I mean, last serious question: when the day comes, hopefully it's many years down the line to 120, when you're at the pearly gates and the maitre d is there waiting to welcome you in,
I give him 20
what
or whatever it is.
would you like him to say on your way? What would you like him to say to you as you enter?
Here's a guy who had a lot of fun and did some fun things that he completed.
Good. Excellent. There you go. There you have that. I'll never forget what Frankie Sutro said when I asked him that question. He goes, the maitre d would say, get the hell out of here. Go back and try again. All right. Let's talk about your book, Uncle Charlie Killed Dutch Schultz, The Jewish Mob Family Affair. Let's talk about where people can find the book.
The book's on Amazon. It's in paperback, as Aaron is holding up, and it's also in Kindle version. You can get it pretty much on any platform that you buy books from.
You personally, you're also on Facebook. Do you have a website where people
I
can?
have a Facebook page. I have my name, Alan Geik, Geik. You won't see it anywhere else. It's unique, and I go into that in the book as well. But also, yeah, you can see you can get it. I also have a Facebook author page as well.
There you go. And by the way, just while we're here, those of you celebrating Yom Kippur this weekend, have an easy fast this weekend, because right here in this room, 2/3 of us on this panel will be celebrating. Although actually 2/3 and a half, because Catherine's half.
She's
right?
half Jewish.
So part of it will be.
Half Italian. My wife's half Italian, half Jewish.
Imagine the arguments in her own head.
Oh,
That's
no.
right. Based on what you were saying. Alan, it's a pleasure. Thank you for coming down. I
Thank you
hope
so
we do
much.
this again in the near
I'd love
future.
to.
Hopefully.
Thank you.
we
Nice
want to thank
meeting you
Alan.
finally.
Finally, yeah.
Peter, thank you for coming in as
Oh,
always.
thank you. It's my
Look
pleasure.
forward to
And
seeing
thank
you in a
you,
couple
John.
hours.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
very
everybody
much.
for. Don't thank him. It'll go to his head.
Okay, I forget it.
Thank everybody for watching. I think I know
Don't
who.
forget, I push the buttons around.
Yeah, you push buttons, okay, and it ain't just the broadcast. Anyway, join us next week. I have a young author coming in. His name is Rico. I met him a few weeks ago when I hosted that rock paper scissors tournament. Don't ask me how I did that. I'll never admit to how I figured that one out. Heroes and Hearts a couple of weeks ago, but Rico's coming in to talk about his book on how to deal with situations that stresses you out. Young author. Make sure you tune in for that next week. He'll be here live in studio. With that, as always, I want to thank you all for listening and watching. No matter how you do it, please make sure you share the feed and how much fun we have here on the show. With that, remember this. Be kind to everybody. Why? Or we have. Don't you forget that. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week right here on Aaron's Hour. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.